Whatever excuses and fears that come into our mind that we allow to take over us, at that moment, it was like my drive and my passion was way louder than whatever insecurity I was facing.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person, just like you, looking for more joy in the everyday. On this podcast, you'll hear more about finding joy in your life throughout the good, the bad, and the in-between. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. Don't forget to share this episode with someone you love. Now I get to introduce you to my dear friend and mountain mover, Mona Pinon. I first met Mona as the force of motherhood when she decided to build a wheelchair-accessible playground for her son by rallying support from her entire community. It was nicknamed the Blue Slide Project. Mona works in real estate in Southern Oregon and is the mom of 5. She's also in the middle of writing her very first book, which we will talk a little bit about in this episode. Also, we talk about one of Mona's greatest skills, being an advocate for her children. You'll learn how that advocacy helped Mona start fighting for herself. Plus, we'll talk about setting your mindset, waking up with intent, and how she finally learned to see her worth. Let's start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself.
I am a mom of 5. My youngest son is physically disabled due to cancer. A lot of times define myself around that. Most recently, I got my real estate license, and so now I'm working, and it feels good to be a working mom, but at the same time, you know, I kind of miss the times where I can snuggle my kids and they're little, and to have the chaos in my house. It's a different kind of chaos now because they're all grown up, and I have a grandbaby who's amazing. I'm a community advocate. I fight for those that don't have a voice, and it is because of my voice being suppressed, I think, for so many years, that I want to fight for those that aren't able to stand up for themselves and do it themselves. And I'm different in the way that I will help somebody along the way. I'm not just going to give them things, I'm going to teach them. And I 100% believe in teaching people until they can do things on their own. Because that's exactly why I'm here, where I am today, because of somebody teaching me and not just giving me.
So tell me, when was the moment that you realized, oh my goodness, I do have this voice and people are listening?
Isaac was starting kindergarten. And I went to his, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background, but I went to his soon-to-be school. I already had went to Parks and Rec to build a playground there at one of the playgrounds. I went to his school and I was like, oh my goodness, there's pea gravel, rocks everywhere. What in the world? He can't start school here with pea gravel. He's in a wheelchair. He'll just sink to the bottom. And there was a single swing, one swing that he could play on. So there was this like pathway to the swing. You know, with the Parks and Rec, they were going to accommodate and pay the money to make any, changes to the playground. But even then it was a struggle because they said, there's these ADA wood chips that, are approved by ADA and, that's all we need. And so I took Isaac to that playground and I said, okay, Isaac, go play. And his wheels kind of spin in the ADA wood chips. Mm-hmm. And I told them at that time, I said, just because something's ADA doesn't mean that it's right. And so it kind of opened their eyes to, oh, we need to do something different. And so back to the playground at his school. So he was going to start school. And so I went to the principal and I said, I don't know if you know, but my kid's in a wheelchair and your playground is not going to work for him. And he said, well, our school district doesn't have any money. We don't have any money, but you can go and talk to the PTA. And so in the meantime, I had been doing some research on, wheelchair accessible playgrounds. And, there was a company that was building these playgrounds, and you raised the money and they had a program and you could build the playground. now I feel like the more awareness has been raised, it's kind of people are thinking about it, but it's not something that, is set in stone, written somewhere, that when you redo a playground that it has to have a ramp, that it has to be ADA compliant, but it doesn't have to have the ramp or the soft surfacing, the rubber tiles, so you can easily roll over.
Right.
So I said, okay. He says, go to the PTA and see, if they have money. So I go to the PTA. PTA doesn't have money. So I have this plan of what I want to do. And they thought my idea was great, but nobody has any money from anywhere. So I struggled a lot and I prayed a lot. And I asked God, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to do this. I don't think it's my responsibility to do this. Can you just please have somebody help me do this? And I think I prayed about 5 times before I got the answer of, you do it, you can do it. And I wasn't like, dear God, please help me do this or find somebody. It was like I was crying because I could see my kid sitting on the sidelines watching all his peers play. And if you think about when you were younger and you think about playing on a playground, you learn every single thing about, problem solving and working together. And, you may get your feelers hurt on the playground, but at least you have that experience. If you're sitting on the sideline, you don't get to experience any of that. And I just didn't think that after all that my son had gone through, that he should have to sit on the sidelines and watch everybody play.
When did you go from crying, upset, like I can't do this, to I can do this? I am going to get this done. I have the ability to do it. When did you make that switch?
So when when that final time that I prayed and I said, okay, God, you need to help me because I cannot do this on my own. And I was really straightforward with him. And I said, you're calling me to do this, and my background, my history in life, there's nothing that ever said that I could do something like this. And so I had like this internal battle inside me, like, yeah, you can. And then God is telling me, God is telling me I can, but then the inside me of what I've experienced in my lifetime is like, no, you can't. So I battled within myself. And so it wasn't until I met, I set up a plan and I did my fundraising, and I literally walked from one end of town to the other end of town. And we don't, Grants Pass is not super huge, but it's not to where you want to walk from one end of town to the other end of town. But I passed out information, and I came Brady Adams. He's a very big advocate in our community, and he's since passed away. But he saw my information, and I had wrote a grant, and he wasn't a part of the interview process, but he said he wanted to be a part of my project on a personal level. And I didn't know what that meant. He met Isaac and I at the playground. And it was when I met him that my thinking began to change. And he, yes, I did the work, but he saw something in me that I didn't see. And if he didn't pull that out of me, I don't know that I would have gone as far as I did or experienced the things that I did. And it was like, it wasn't just that he had to remind me one time, he had to remind me several times of who I was and the things that I was capable of and how special I was. And I had never had anybody in my lifetime, a stranger, I've never had a stranger tell me that I was worth something. And I think that's when my mind began to change, and I was building this momentum and, getting grants. We got grants, $40,000 grant. And it was like, oh my goodness. I had never experienced anything like that and never thought I could ever do anything like that. And in the midst of this, my brother, who my brother was like my dad. I didn't grow up with my dad. He was in prison the majority of my life. He was heroin addict and alcoholic, and so he just never could make good choices. And so I feel like my big brother knew the pattern my dad had and kind of just was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna be that person for you, and so in the midst of building this playground between phase 1 and phase 2, my brother dies. I remember Brady telling me, I got this $40,000 grant. I call him up and I said, could you accept the money for me? And basically Brady says, Mona, you gotta put your big girl pants on and you gotta go thank those people for giving you that money. Wow. It was like days after my brother had passed away, I want to say, that I got up in front of people and with my heart crushed. Like, you can't even, it was like my father had passed away. When my dad died, I did not feel this way. It was sad that he was gone, but when my brother passed, it was like my heart was ripped out of me. And my husband was like, I need you back. Like, come back to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things.
The playground ends up being built, and then, how old is Isaac now?
He's 11 going on 12.
So is he still at the elementary school? Maybe? Is he 6th grade or 7th grade?
No, he's going on 7th grade now.
Okay, so his playground days are over, but looking back and knowing that he was able to have that experience in school, I'm wondering, did it pay off?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One thing people need to understand is that a wheelchair accessible playground is not just for the child or person in a wheelchair or a walker or any mobility devices. It is not just for that person. You have to figure there's peers that will get to play with that person. You have grandparents, and our playground was open to the community, so we got to use this as a way of getting more money because it was a public playground. Grandparents that are in wheelchairs can now, push their grandchildren on this, on the swing on this playground. They can run around the surfacing, if they're in a wheelchair with their grandson or daughter. Parents that maybe are veterans that have been injured at war, any type of person that has a disability can play on this playground with able-bodied people. So it's everyone together. Inclusion. That was the point of doing this, is including everyone, not just Isaac.
What about for him? How was his experience changed?
Well, I don't know he doesn't know any different. Mm-hmm. So I can't even tell you, because he went from being a little guy, from me carrying him and being able to play on the playground that way because I'm carrying him around, to going to this playground that he can access any parts of it. So it was a part of his growing up. He didn't know any different.
What does that do to you, to your heart, when you look back and you say, I created this? Of course, with the help of the community, but to be able to look back and say, I made this happen. What does that do to your heart?
You know what it did for me? I think you remember, I had walked from Medford to Grants Pass to try to bridge that gap, because there was a playground in Medford that was semi-accessible.
This is like a 45-minute drive for those of you who don't live here.
Yeah, so it was 35 miles, and at the time I was 250 pounds. I had walked that distance, and if I wouldn't have started anything, I wouldn't have had that 35-mile experience. And on that journey of walking, it was kind of like with each step that I took, I was getting rid of the giants that were holding me back. And as I was accomplishing, there was a point to where it felt like I was walking on pins, because my feet hurt so bad, and they were swollen, and I wanted, and mind you, my friends were like, no one would blame you for stopping. No one would blame you right now if you just stopped. And I just kind of like, I looked at him and I was like, don't talk to me like that. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not stopping. And I had set it in my mind that I was not going to stop. And the only way that I would stop is if my body just gave out on me, because I wasn't willingly going to stop. And it was like that for the playground. There were people that, kind of wanted to make it about them. And it's like, no, the playground is not about you. It's not about me. It's about the kids and finishing this for the kids. And so I've had to say, if you're not going to help me, then please just step out of my way, because I'm not going to accommodate you being in my way. I've always had that drive, but not to this extent to where I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And it was, I believe it was because, like, I would let the voices tell me, like, oh, because you grew up this way and because you're not adequate enough, and, whatever excuses and fears that come into our mind that we allow to take over us. At that moment, it was like my drive and my passion was way louder than whatever insecurity I was facing. And so I just kept pushing.
What do you think people can learn from your story?
Sometimes we're given ideas to accomplish them, and sometimes we're given ideas for somebody else to accomplish them. Okay. I wake up in the morning and I write, if there's something that fresh that comes to my mind, I write it down. And it might not be for me to do it. It might be for somebody else to do it, it sounds so crappy to say, Danielle, but, like, I'm Isaac's mom for a reason. There's a reason I'm his mom. And I would not wish to ever have him paralyzed or anything like that. Like, if I could have my son walk today, I would just say, okay, I want my son to walk. But because of the experience of him being paralyzed, I have learned so much about not only him, but myself and the things that the human mind is capable of doing. And I 100% believe that if you decide to do something and you actively move towards that goal every single day, that it will get accomplished. With every part of my soul, I believe that.
Part of this is rewriting the way you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself. So someone listening, how could they take that into their own lives, change what they've been telling themselves for a lot of us since we were kids?
Yeah, it takes practice. Like, I would be a liar if I said, like, the voices don't come back and say, oh, you're not adequate or whatever. But what I've learned to do is remember when we were talking about your happiness and progress, is like, if it doesn't align with what I know is truth, then I don't care. I really don't.
Right.
And so, and that takes practice. It's not, it's not you wake up one day and you're like that. It's like every day you wake up with intent. And I listen to T.D. Jakes a lot. He's a preacher out of Texas. I was just listening to him on Sunday, and he talked about, waking up every day with intent, and that it is totally true. If you wake up with, not really sure what you're going to do for the day, and you're just like here and there, but if you wake up determined to do something and you have your little to-do list, I bet you things are going to get done.
Right.
So I've just made the choice. I do want our world to be a better place, and I do feel that each person doing their part in the world can make a difference. There are some really nasty things out there. You're scrolling on Facebook and you're seeing how everyone's perfect marriage, and you have your, everyone's on vacation, going to Hawaii for like the third time, and you're just like, what the heck? How do they do that? I just made the choice. Like, I don't want to listen to the news. I get the information from my husband, but I really don't care. I do a lot of research. I like to research things, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Feed my mind with really good things. To wake up, and with happiness being a choice, you wake up and it's a choice. You wake up, you stub your toe in the morning and it hurts and you're like, oh, today's going to be a bad day. You've made that decision to make it be a bad day. And it was in October that I discovered all these like things, extra things that I could live by.
Why October? What happened then?
Yeah, October of last year, I read a book called The 7 Decisions by Andy Andrews. And the decisions that you make every day, he researched 250 people. And he found that these 250 people made these 7 choices every day. And I'm going to read them to you.
Okay.
I am responsible for my past and my future, so the buck stops here, okay? I will seek wisdom. I am a person of action. I have a decided heart. I will greet the day with a forgiving spirit. Today I will choose to be happy, and I will persist without exception. I possess every single one of these traits, but I don't think that I possess them all at the same time. And, I will persist without exception. I had that for the Blue Side Project.
Yeah. And I've seen that in you in action. Which do you think is the hardest for you?
I don't know. They all became just a part of who I am. I think when I read the book, I think the one that was the hardest for me at first, and that was like, oh my gosh, I have spent my whole life just like blaming other people. Is I am responsible for my past and my future. So where I am today is a result of the choices that I made, good or bad. And I was always like, oh, it's because I grew up without a dad, and it's because of this or that. I've always blamed other people for where I was in my life. And when I took full responsibility for it, it was like this, I don't know, it was like a weight, even though I was taking it on, it was like this weight that was lifted. Because then I can own it and it was mine and I could let it go.
Right. You can't let something go if it doesn't belong to you. What was the first step for you to taking that ownership and letting it go?
I journaled. So in the book, he wants you to journal. And so I started journaling, and he has you write out like your biggest fears, and then he wants you to like, okay, now that you've written them down, like rewrite them, kind of like what we did at your event, just rewriting the things that you tell yourself. And so that was the steps that I was taking. Is like, you see it on paper, you see these fears on paper, you see the things that you feel inadequate at, and then you rewrite it and you work towards it. For me, it's like, I want to do this for myself, but so I interviewed my kids, and I want them to see that it's a change that that can stick, and it's a change that if you work towards something, that it will stick. So I interviewed all my kids separately, and one of my boys I interviewed, and I asked him what his favorite color was, and he says it's gray. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what the heck? It's not gray, it's green. I was like, I thought it was green. He's all, no. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, no, it's green because I gave him the color green. I have 3 boys. And so if I gave them all the same color, they would be fighting over, whose is what. And so each boy had a different color, and I assigned him the color green. It wasn't his favorite. And so I asked him, okay, if you can ask me any question you want to ask me, and I'll answer it. And what is it? And he says, I just want to know why you're always so happy. How can you just wake up and just be happy? And I got to share with him this book about how happiness being a choice. And I can tell you that kid, oh my gosh, he's just like, he's so different after hearing that. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to experience this book and share it with my kids. And the seeking wisdom part of it, I told the kids, go to school and learn everything you can, but I want you to bring one thing home to me that I can learn. And so at first it was like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I was like very excited about it. I'm like, what'd you learn? And so they're like, I kind of forgot. And so, but after asking them and knowing that I was going to ask them when they came home, they were telling me, oh, we're doing this. And my son was telling me about being, dissecting the shark and all of these things, where before they wouldn't come home and just willingly tell me this information. And, yes, we have that awkward silence in the car and all of that, but when they're ready to talk to me, they talk to me because they know I want to listen, I want to learn. And so, even though this book taught me about seeking wisdom, it also taught me about communication with my kids, just making sure that my ear is always available to them, because our attention always is everywhere.
Oh, yeah, especially today. Okay, I want to ask you about your book. You're working on it now. What is one thing you want people who read it when it's finished to take away?
I really would hope that they would take away perseverance. We all get these setbacks in life, and I call them these detours. I write about it in my book, and how even though a place seems familiar in a detour, if the weather and the climate is different, it's going to look different. And how the choices that you're making, even though they feel right at the time, when you're off your element, it may not feel the same. And so just really trusting yourself through these detours of life, and to really know that, we all experience it, whether we want to talk about it or not. And I think that's what was great about your event, Danielle, is that we got to talk about the hard issues and the hard things in life, and let everyone else know that they're not the only ones experiencing it. So really want to take from my book, just being relentless. And that's the name of my book, Relentless, because I've experienced so much in my lifetime, even though there were points where I wanted to give up and points where I did give up, that I kept pushing forward, and that God He never quit chasing me. Looking back, He never quit chasing me. It was me that just stopped.
When are you hoping this book will be done and ready to buy?
So I was hoping to already be done with it by now, but in real estate is kind of different in the summertime, and I wasn't really thinking about things. So I'm hoping to have it done now by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be the first one to buy it. I'll be the first one with it in my hands. I want to thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Mona. I have already started asking my kids what they can teach me from their school day. I loved that piece of advice. Also, you may notice this episode was a little shorter than usual. I'm looking for feedback from you. Do you like episodes to be shorter, or do you like them to be longer? If you'll just send me a message on Facebook, Instagram, or in my email, I would really appreciate it, as I'm planning for 2020. Okay, coming up in the next episode of Happiness in Progress, I'm looking into the fear of failure, how that holds us back from just getting started, just trying something. I'm really excited for that episode, so I hope you'll subscribe now so you don't miss it. And I want to thank you for being here on Happiness in Progress.